everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 10 of 86. And I'll be honest, this has been like the hardest series for me to ever react to on this channel. Ever. And I've been trying to figure out why. Because it's not that it's a bad series. I'm going to talk about this real quick. I know we talked in episode 8 about it, and it's been a few weeks since then. Again, I'm behind on schedule recording this. Because I just keep holding back and I keep waiting to the last minute. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why? It's not that this series is a bad series. I'm really enjoying it. I like it. I want to love it. I think I've been trying to rationalize what it is because I will be honest, for about 3 days, spent wondering if I should just shelve this series for a while until I felt better about it. But then I was like, am I going to feel better about it if I do that? I don't know. I've never stopped a series before. I've never dropped a series. I'm a very completionist person. I want to finish it. So I was like, no, I don't want to give up on this series, but I want to try to figure out why do I not want to watch it? That's the thing. It's not that it's bad. If, sometimes there's a feeling where if a series is bad, you kind of want to watch it because you want to analyze it and be like, why is it so terrible? And make fun of it. And that's not the case with the series at all. I like it. And I think I figured out what it is. It's that everyone has hyped this series so much. I had it recommended over and over again. Everybody was like, it's better than Attack on Titan. And I was like, oh, that's a tall order because Attack on Titan is one of my favorite series. So you're telling me it's better than that? Well, what amazing things await. And then everybody's like, oh, just wait. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. It's one of the best series. And the music, and everybody was talking about Sawano doing the music. The music's great. The sound design's great. But everyone has hyped this series up to such a degree that I feel as a literary, I'm a teacher. I teach literature. I have a master's in literature. So I'm like, I study it. And I feel everybody's hyped it up so much as being so amazing that I'm looking at it with a much more critical eye than I would other series. There's things I would let go in other series because nobody's been like, it's the most amazing thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. But here, because everyone has hyped it up to be the most amazing series and the most amazing light novel series, I'm like, well, then it needs to live up to my expectations because I'm watching some very, very good series. I just finished Attack on Titan. I'm reading Heaven Official's Blessing, which is one of the best stories I've read in a long time. And so I'm like, okay, you've got to live up to that expectation. And not to be critical, but it's kind of falling short in some categories for me. I've had a lot of people be like, well, you just don't get a lot of time to spend with the characters. I'm like, I am a character-driven person. If a story does not have compelling, deep characters, I don't get invested because I want to invest in these characters. And other than Lena, who we've spent the most time with, we know her the best. I am invested in Lena's character. I like her character a lot. Other than her, Raiden, I guess, because we've spent the most time with Raiden. Sheen, we know Sheen and Ray's relationship I love. I love Ray and Sheen's relationship, and I feel like we get a lot with that. But other than that, Sheen is still very mysterious. Other than those 3 characters, there's not really anybody to latch on to. You're like, well, there's Theo. He draws. There's Karina. She pines after Sheen. It's pretty one-dimensional. And then, there's Anju, which she has some depth to her, but she doesn't say anything. So I guess compared to series like Attack on Titan, which at this point in the series, 9-10 episodes in, we have had in that series a lot better establishment with the characters and much more time spent with them. In this story, it's a lot more plot-driven and symbolism and theme-driven, which is good. I love symbolism and theme, but it's easy for me to pick apart symbolism theme. That stuff's easy. You see that, you can pick it apart, you can stop the screen, you can say it. But with characters, there's lots of little nuances and subtleties, and we're getting that, but it's not, again, people have hyped it up, being like, this is the greatest thing, and I'm like, I want it to match up to that, and then when it doesn't, I'm like, oh, okay. And that's kind of like some people were trying to argue that, the battle being so short between Sheen and Ray, it's intentional. And I'm like, but we've built up for 9 episodes this big epic battle that's going to be between Sheen and Ray, the big battle. It's going to be this big confrontation between brothers. It should be a major, major plot point. And it lasted 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think I was telling Nuclear Gandhi in the Discord, I think that's me being greedy. I wanted more time with Ray. I wanted more time building that up with Ray. Again, character development, character-driven stories. I wanted more with that, more built up of their story. And now it feels to me like it's just ended. I'm like, oh, so we're never getting Ray again? So we had him for 9 episodes of the whole series and that's it? That's it? We don't get Ray anymore? And he's some of your favorite character and then that's it? So I feel like I'm letting people down in the analysis because I'm being so hypercritical of it, because I've been given this expectation that it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when it's just good, I'm like, okay, well, but this is your favorite show? Why? And I know that I'm judging way too soon. I know I'm judging way too soon, but if you've watched any of my shows, I'm very aware and I'm very self-transparent. I'm transparent about this. I say this in discussions. I've said it for this show. I don't know if people watch all of my discussions. Probably not. But I say that I will make assumptions about characters, about things, and I am fully prepared to be proven wrong. I am hoping that I'm proven wrong, but I gotta be proven wrong. And so you all just have to bear with me until I get to that point. So I think my biggest thing that's holding me back with wanting to react to this show is, one, I think I'm gonna be too critical of it, and then I'm not gonna be as impressed as everyone else is of it, and then my analysis isn't going to be as good as you expect it to be. So that's kind of my self-consciousness about it. But I mean, I like this show a lot, don't get me wrong, but when somebody was like, this is better than Attack on Titan, I'm like, not yet, it's not. It's good, but I don't know if it's better than that. I gotta see some major character development, some major narrative things play out before we can get to that point. And that's kind of the big problem, is I think a lot of people commenting and trying to, like, the problems I had with episode 8 and leading up to it is a lot of people are impatient and they want me to immediately understand how great this series is, but instead of letting me naturally experience it, they're trying to, like, force me to understand why it's great. And I'm like, that's a bad move. Don't do that with me. I will tell you all, first and foremost, I am a Taurus. I am a stubborn bull. And if you try to poke me and try to prod me towards liking something, I will often run in the opposite direction. Because I'm like, well, you don't know me. You can't make me like this. And it will often have the very adverse effect of not doing that. So just FYI, please don't try to make me be like, well, you need to understand and realize. No, that's the problem. I do understand the symbolism, the themes. It's very, and that's kind of another thing. It's a lot more obvious, I think, than I was expecting. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it's right there, you know? And a lot of series I've watched have been a lot more subtle. So I don't know. That's my bias. So, but again, people have raised my expectations, and so I expect them to be met. And when they're not met, I'm like, well, then why did people say that? So I think that's my problem. So 2 things. 1, don't hype a series up for me, because I will be hypercritical of it. And if it doesn't meet my expectations, I'll be disappointed. And 2, please be patient with me. Please be patient. So I may end up having to record ahead on this show. That may just be what I have to do. I did that with Berserk and it worked out wonderfully. I ended up enjoying that series a lot because I was recording ahead of everybody's comments so that I could not be spoiled and also have a chance to naturally engage with the series. So that's probably what I'm gonna have to do. I'm probably gonna have to just sit down, record a bunch of these, get through them. The problem is they are time consuming because there's a lot to talk about. So again, I'm not saying it's not an in-depth show that is without value. I really like it. There is a lot to talk about with symbolism and theme. Character work. Character's probably my least favorite element of this show so far because it's very surface level and we haven't gotten in depth with a lot of these characters except for like 3 and that's it. And I'm like, give me more. And so I'm ready for that. I'm hoping that we go off now that Shin and them are off the grid. I'm hoping we spend some more time with those characters so that I like them better and I understand them better and we get more about them. Because right now it is very much like I could write a paragraph about Theo and that's all we know so far. I hope we get more with him and other characters too. And I like Raiden a lot. Someone was telling me in the Patreon comments that their dub voice actor for Raiden is the same as Joe from Skate the Infinity, and he's been dubbing a lot of characters. I love his voice. It's beautiful. So I may have to watch some of the dub so I can listen to Raiden. But I don't know. I guess I'm also mad because Ray's gone. And so maybe, who knows, maybe Ray will come back throughout the future episodes, like in flashbacks with Sheen. But Sheen says he doesn't remember a lot of his brothers. So that's the thing, too, that's frustrating, is that in my head, I'm like, well, okay, narratively, maybe Ray will come back and be an important part of the rest of the story, even though he's gone now. But then you've established as a character trait that Sheen doesn't remember a lot of his brother. So it's like, well, then that's probably not going to happen unless, you know, his memories have suddenly flooded back now that he's defeated him. But I don't know. I really like this show, and I don't want to give up on it. But I think that's been my problem, is that expectation, the bar is really high. And now I'm like, okay, show, I've been watching some top tier shows on this channel. You tell me the bar is high and this is an amazing series. It's got to live up to it. And right now, it's good. Is it my favorite show? No. I think it could become that, maybe, but it's got a long road to hoe since people have made it the bar so exceedingly high, and my expectations are warranted. So yeah. And honestly, I think YouTube has saved this show, really, because there were some commenters for episode 8 that were just like, hey, I don't ever really comment, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. And I think that's my big thing too, is I'm afraid my reactions and discussions aren't living up to people's expectations, and people are frustrated with me, and so that affects my wanting to watch it as well. So, and I'm not asking for people to praise me. That's not at all what I want. I'm not that type of person. But I do feel like if I'm not giving a quality reaction and discussion, then I need to back off until I can give a quality and reaction and discussion. But then I know me, I will get busy with other shows on this channel, and I won't want to go back to it because I'll be too busy. So I can't stop. I've started, I can't stop, or I probably won't pick it up again. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I think my best course of action is just to forge ahead. And I realize I've talked way too long about it. So that's where we're at. But yeah, so that's where we're at. I am really excited to see where we're going now, because we're kind of in no man's land, literally. We're kind of in the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen, so I am excited about that. But just be patient with me is the thesis of my long-winded rant. So, but we'll see. So we're going to dive into episode 10 of 86. Thank you, Mevelyn, for getting me the fan translations. I appreciate it. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. What? Why we gotta go kill Fido? Why? How did Fido become my favorite character in one episode, and then suddenly we're given the knowledge that they're probably dead? What? What even is Fido? That's the big question. What even is Fido? There's something... I will say, as much as I am very, very critical of this series, there is always like some little like note of mystery or some hint that there's something else going on beneath the surface that makes me go, okay, well, but why is that? What is that? What's going on? And the answer will probably be very simple. It's just, I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? So Fido, interestingly enough, they are a camera that has been they have a camera that's been documenting the entirety of Sheen's journey. I took several stills and screenshots of images to share in the Discord of the photos that they were taking, and I didn't notice this in the reaction, but going back through real quick, I was like, oh, I saw something, I want to get a picture of it. And you can see in the corner the dates where everything's been happening. So it was following him. Now here's the creepy part. It was following him from 2144 to 2148. It's been following him. We see the very first image where he finds Fido, and Fido has a little tear coming out of his eye. Yeah, which was really cute, like a little tear where he's crying because all of his juggernauts were destroyed. We see that, but it shows that he met Sheen in the 1 unit there, and then he's with Sheen up until October 30th of this year, which is, it dawned on me, I was thinking of the timing of it, that's where their month-long supplies is running out. So the question is, how far did they make it? How far did they go? What did they encounter? Did they encounter more Legion? Did they get to a certain point? Why is Fido not able to go on beyond that? But the thing that's kind of creepy is that one of the images that we see, right? So we also see October. We also find out through the images, there's a 2145 one that shows a younger looking Raiden with Sheen. So Sheen and Raiden have known each other for several years. They met several years ago, and that's why they're so close. There's an image. It's a split second. It's the tiniest second. You could probably miss it. But there is an image of Fido's camera looking up from the grass, and there's Sheen, like a young Sheen, looking down at him, and it says March 18th, 2138. And it's on there. There's a 2138, March 18th. And we see Fido's camera. And there's Sheen, and there's Ray, and there's Annette. And they're all standing there. So this was 6 years before that. So what the fudge is Fido? What is Fido? And Sheen, understanding Fido, I'm like, was it technology developed by Annette's dad when they were like debating this whole war thing? Was it when the war was starting with Jihad and the Legion? Was Fido like the camera that was being created by Annette's parents? Why did Sheen know about it? Does Sheen realize that this is the same Fido from earlier? Are all the Fidos linked together and they all share the same camera documenting this stuff? What do we do? I really am hoping there are multiple, because we've seen multiple Fidos, right? I'm hoping that they all share like the same documented footage, maybe, although that's asking for a lot because there's a lot of Fidos and they seem to be with different units, so maybe not. But I'm like, I feel like this documented footage is exactly what Lena would need to show the people of the Republic, be like, hey, the 86 are humans. Here's all this stuff that's been happening to them over the last several years. Here's all this documented footage literally within these units that we could use as evidence to completely show the Republic shit. I feel like that's all there for the taking if you can find a way to extract it. But why it's being documented, why is it there to tell their stories? Is it like a memoriam? What is the purpose of Fido? That is the question. Fido, we know his utilitarian purpose within the unit of the 86 is to gather things and help transport things, and we know its functionality, but what's the point of the camera? Because other than Sheen, who I think knows that it was being documented, maybe, we're not entirely sure, nobody else realizes that this stuff's all being recorded. So, what's the point? And is there someone somewhere watching this footage that's being recorded, or is it just being stored in the Fido unit? We don't know. So that mystery, I'm like, okay, all right. I'm ready to find out more with that. So I hope we get more with that. I hope it's not just a moot point and it's just some mysterious thing we never call back to. But I feel like the fact that Ray and Annette are there and Sheen as a kid looking down at the camera, I feel is significant. Even if Sheen doesn't remember it, maybe Annette will. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird oddity that I'm like, okay, show. All right, we'll see this. And of course, we start out the episode with the Juggernaut cannon and the bird flying off from it. I really like this episode a lot. I'm glad we spent the entire episode just focusing on the 5 of them. I love the perspective. That is one of the more unique things about this show that I appreciate, is getting the multiple perspectives, seeing half of it from Lena's point of view, half of it from their point of view. It does create this kind of anxious, claustrophobic atmosphere because you're just like, it gets so tense going back in, and claustrophobic may not be the right word, but it gets going back and forth like that can create all this tension. And for this episode, I liked that it just breathed. It just let it just be their perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if, well, next episode's episode 11, and we know we have a split core, so episode 12 is after that. I would be very curious to see if we are going to spend next episode with Lena's perspective or if we're going to keep with these and find out what happened on the 30th, and then episode 12 is Lena's perspective. That would be interesting. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do with that. That has me intrigued. That's why I probably will watch ahead, because I want to find out what's going to happen with that without anybody telling me. But I did like this episode because it let them breathe. It was very, like, it was beautiful. The animation was gorgeous. The music and everything was really nice. I liked the idea that they were going along the old train tracks and going through that and going back through the old town. I'm kind of obsessed with, I think watching Spirited Away as a kid kind of influenced me, but abandoned theme parks and abandoned things that have kind of been reclaimed by nature. I love seeing photos of that. There's people that actually do big photo books of, like, the one I really, really enjoyed was, in a morbid, weird way, is after Hurricane Katrina in the United States back in the early 2000s, there was like a Six Flags that was abandoned, like a theme park they didn't reclaim, and nature just kind of overtook it. And then years later, a photographer went back in and just photographed like how nature had like taken back over the steel and all of the man-made things and sort of like put it back into nature. And it was really cool. And it's really interesting. It's kind of, there's a haunting quality of it. And that's kind of like this episode, as they're going through the abandoned cities, there's like a haunting feel where people have been there, but they're no longer there. And like, it's so interesting seeing like the shop windows blown out, and there's just all of the stuff, like the materialistic things just lying about, but nobody's taking them because they just abandoned it. And then I'm glad they found a boiler. I'm glad they could all take a bath. At least if they're all going to go out, they're going to go out clean. Cleaner, right? Because yeah, it'd been 2 weeks since they had a bath. I don't blame them for being a little bit dirty, right? But there is something interesting here where we see other juggernauts and things along the way. So the question, of course, as we're seeing these different parts and pieces lying about here, is there are some questions, obviously, that I've got. One, Fido's purpose. A dog's purpose. Because he is like a dog. What was Fido's purpose, other than the obvious? What is the point of recording all of this? Who's watching it? What is it for? How the hell does he know Sheen from so long ago? And part of me at the moment was thinking, well, is this something telepathic? Is this something telepathic where, like, Sheen, it's like accessed Sheen's memories, kind of like Legion has done? Is that something that maybe it's seeing things in Sheen's memory, but it's looking at Sheen and not looking through Sheen's eyes. So that's something. So what is the purpose? Have others, I guess the big question is, how far, hey guys, have others made it? My dogs are going to be annoying. So how far have others made it? That's the question as well. Like what's the extent of how far have we gone? Because it seems like there's pieces of Juggernaut as we go. So where did that end up at? That's the question, right? Because we see all these missing. It's not Legion. There's actually Juggernauts that have been left behind. So, and we see somebody, like, I guess it's like a skeleton or something up against a tree. Like, how far did they make it and why were they all going? I don't know. There was one comment that I kind of ignored a little bit because I didn't know if they were trying to spoil something, but they were saying that they're still on a mission, but I'm like, what mission? At this point, like Theo says, they're kind of free. They really don't have, what's their mission other than stopping the Legion and just keep going, right? They're not in Sand Republic territory anymore. They're technically in Geod. They're not even in the Republic or 86. So they really aren't bound by any duties that the Republic has given them other than stopping the Legion. They're just trying to survive and go as far as they can. And they're technically free at this point, but free to do what? That's the big question in this episode. So it's like, what do you do when you're beyond the scope of the society you've been a part of and you're kind of outside your limits of what you've normally been doing? What do you do then? So that is a big question, right? What are they going to do now? And it's like, well, we're not in a hurry. We can go as far as we please. Let's just keep moving forward and seeing what we're getting at. And I do think there are definitely elements of Attack on Titan at this point in the story. We'll talk about it here in a minute, but I was like, okay, what are we going to be doing with that? So, but I just like the atmosphere of the calm of them just eating and sharing these moments, and it's really serene, and Fido's recording all of it, and the animation's gorgeous and the atmosphere is really beautiful. I don't want to dog any of that because I really, really like it. I will say, I wish we had more of them talking. And that's me being very, 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 very nitpicky. And I understand, again, it's because this is adapting from a novel, not a manga. Because in a manga, like I said, I think it was last episode, when you adapt from a manga or a graphic novel, you can have all of these little side conversations, you can have all these things happening at once, and when you read the page, you can kind of experience it all, like, you can see who's talking when, in what order, and you kind of experience it in a more holistic view. In a novel, you kind of have to just read linearly. And so graphic novels are not so linear in a sense of you can have a lot on a page and you kind of pick and choose where your eye goes. In a novel, you kind of have a linear conversation, a linear trajectory with your story. And you can only do so much at one time. And so you can definitely feel this is adapted from a novel. I personally would have liked more conversation between the characters. We get more character development. We get more shown with characters through Fido than we have the last 2 episodes. So I'm like, just let me watch Fido's footage, I guess, for the next 6 episodes. And I'll be like, okay, Fido gave us more character development with these characters than we've seen from the episodes themselves in a while. But like, I like the moments like with Anju and Karina and in the bath and them talking, and in the moments of the 3 guys talking about them. Like, I want more of that. I feel like we've got so much we've got to do with the plot that we don't really have time to stop. And I mean, this episode does stop and smell the roses, don't get me wrong. The pacing of this episode was great, but as a whole, I feel like we're on episode 10, but we've gone so far through the plot. It's like, and I know there's a lot more left to go. I guess to me, it feels like this series is like speeding through things rather than taking its time, and I like a slow burn. So maybe that's my thing. I like a slow burn. Like Attack on Titan, for example, it takes its time to set up some things, but the pacing is still going like this. So it can be done. I'm not saying it can't be. It can be. But this series is booking it. It's like, we gotta go. And I'm like, I thought there was 14 of these novels. Why do we have to go so fast? Is there just that much happening? And again, be patient with me. I'm sure we'll find out. But it just feels like we're rushing through everything. And at the same time, we're not rushing because we do stop and have a moment with nature, but it just goes by so quickly. I guess I'm like, I feel like, I don't know how I feel. But I would have liked, like in the conversation when they're in the cave, it's just music and it's silent and they're just sitting there eating and drinking coffee and looking at one another. And I get that. They've been through so much. There's really not much to say. But for somebody that wants more character development, I'm like, I would have liked them to talk and to get more about what they're thinking and feeling and etc. But this series would rather shows than tells, but then there is a lot they're not telling. So, but I'm sure they're trying to keep it mysterious for reasons. I do like the idea of the maple leaf, the 5 little leafed maple leaf representing the 5 of them. That's really cute. And it's the idea of it's autumn, not everything can stay, not all things gold can stay. They're eventually going to get to a point where they're going to run into trouble, and we see the Legion. I think one of my favorite shots of the whole episode, though, in terms of just the visuals of it, as beautiful as the animation is, the shot where we see the Legion walking in a little line, like a line of ants, towards where the 86 are. We know where they're headed. We know where they're going. And it's so weird because they're kind of like incognito behind enemy lines, seeing where the Legion are headed to. And it's very creepy. And just the look on all their faces, like in that moment, we don't need words. In that moment, seeing them all watching the Legion, they know exactly where they're going, what's about to happen to the people on the other side that they left behind to move forward. It's a very show not tell moment that's very effective. And I do like that. I do like that a lot. And plus it puts in the mindset of us, the viewer, that Lena is out there right now. We presume she's been for 2 weeks. That's the thing. What's Lena been doing the last 2 weeks? Well, she's probably been helping the next group of 86 coming in. So it's like, what is she? And maybe she's not. We don't know. That's a big question too. What is Lena doing? What has Lena been doing this month? Because by the end of this episode, a month has passed. So what's Lena been up to? We don't know. So that's going to be a big question to find out. Like, what has she been doing? How's she been handling this? Probably not well. But Lena's a pretty resilient person, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, it is a really good moment. And then, of course, he looks back at the leaf and realizes probably that, yeah, we've got a long road ahead of us and we're in enemy territory. We're not safe. It looks all nice and happy, but we are not safe in this moment, right? Also, it just occurred to me that in the OP, there is a shot of him holding a piece of a juggernaut, and it's the piece of Rey's juggernaut. And there is a shot of Fido. I had to pause it where Fido was showing him tearing it out. It was October 1st. And it was him tearing out the piece. I had to pause and be like, whose juggernaut is that? Because for a second I was like, is it somebody we knows? But it was Rey's juggernaut is what he was tearing out. I was like, okay. All right, show. And so then, and yeah, we have, and again, but we have Fido in there too, recording. What is Fido recording and where is it going? That is the question. Interesting. So I do like, in terms of character development, I do like the most character development we have other than Lena and Lena with Sheen is Sheen with Raiden. And I really like Raiden and Sheen's relationship. I like how it's very much like a big brother, we look after each other relationship. We've known each other for years. It feels probably the most natural and developed out of all of the characters. And I like Raiden a lot. So I appreciate his character. I've noticed they got rid of the little comm microphones. They still have the ear tag for the Parade, but they've gotten rid of the other things. And Raiden has a very, like, a big brother quality to him where he's, like, watching over Sheen because he knows that Sheen is prone to go off on his own like he does here and do reckless things because Sheen doesn't really have a lot of value in his life yet. So they're talking about trying to make it across this water, and the water's too deep and there's no way the juggernauts can make it. So we'll put this up here. Sheen's big ordeal in this is his purpose now. Is his purpose in life. And I do like the way that they call out throughout this episode. They're like, you know, normally we'd be at the end of the series and we'd make it to paradise and this is heaven and we made it to the end of the road. What do we do now? And it's like, okay, we've made it. I feel like I'm going to have Attack on Titan spoilers throughout this entire video. But just know from here on in, I will probably be talking about things about Attack on Titan season 3 and on. Probably about season 3 of Attack on Titan. So if you've not seen Attack on Titan season 3, I will preface it and just skip like 30 seconds past at this point. But they talk about like making it to the end. Making it to the end where it's paradise and heaven. I'm going to talk about Attack on Titan Season 3 for the next 30 seconds, so just skip ahead if you don't want to listen to that. But it reminded me a lot about getting to the ocean and the goal of making it to the ocean. And then once you get there, what do you do? And so that's kind of the same problematic space that they're in. They're like, well, we've made it to the ocean. Now what? And the thing that I'm curious about is in Attack on Titan, we see on the other side, things are not... Because you've been isolated in this little bubble the entire time. They've been isolated in 86 in the districts, and they've not been to the Republic. They've not been the outside, so they really have no clue what's going on. And we, as an audience, have no clue, like, outside what the Legion is doing. Is there life out there? Is there life on the other side? We don't know. So there is this question, because honestly, and you're going to have to skip more than 30 seconds and realize, I'll just put a thing up here. But what's interesting is that we, as the audience, are thinking, okay, well, when they get past, you know, the 86 district and they get into the Jihad territory, I was thinking maybe there'd be people. Well, now we're in the Jihad territory and there isn't anybody. So it's like, okay, well, they have been wiped out. So what now? Like, are there other countries that have not been attacked by Legion that are outside of Legion's purview that we can get to? Are they there? And so that opens up a big can of worms, right? Because if they are out there, could our 5 individuals make it to them? I don't know about that. If they do make it to them, is it, you know, I'm thinking again, Attack on Titan spoilers, are they going to be sympathetic towards them? Are they going to accept them? Are they going to be against the Republic? We don't know. And so there's a big question mark there of, well, when they get there, if they get there, what's that going to be like? And I don't know. It's kind of a blank because you feel so contained by the story. And Legion as the enemy, that you don't really think about life outside of the country and outside of this war, if it even exists. And that's something that's kind of a very realistic thing to think. When you're involved in a country that's at war with another, it's hard to think about, you know, or if you're involved in just a conflict, it's hard to think about the other people outside of that conflict. So that's going to be interesting to see if it ends up going anywhere. I don't know. So they're like, are we talking about our juggernauts? And then Anju's like, well, can we make it across? And they're like, well, we're not really in any hurry. I like they talk about how Kujo and Daya and Haruto and them would just have jumped through. And they're like, so with all the recon units out there, it was going to be tough. So there are recon units that are surveying the area that they're afraid of are going to find them. And I'm assuming that's what happened on the 30th of October, that they were found and discovered. It only took a month for it to happen. And like, we're able to keep the rain and the wind off, which was a big help. We've been on this special recon mission for 2 weeks now. My question is, what's the point? Like, why are you on this recon mission? At this point, the Republic doesn't expect you to live. They don't expect you to survive. They thought you were going to be dead already. They've already replaced you with new people. So why do you still consider it a mission? Like, what's the point? And I know I have to be patient because we're going to find this out. But it's like, why do you, at this point, is it even a mission, or are you guys just free and trying to find, is there life out there? We don't know, right? What's the whole point? And I'm glad that they acknowledged that they thought they were going to die after the first day. So they shut off their location trackers a long time ago. Yeah, like they're not using the parade to get in contact. They can't get in contact with anybody from San Magnolia. So it's like, at this point, are you even still doing anything for the Republic? You're kind of on your own now. And you're technically, like Theo says, you're technically free to do whatever, but you can't go back because you're going to die. So it's like you can only move forward, but you have no clue what's going to come next, right? It's interesting. And they're like, well, what's the plan? And Sheen's like, do we need to go forward right now? We can kind of just hang out. We're not in a big hurry. As long as we just keep our supplies, that's all that matters, right? And I do like, again, we see like little things like Karina chasing like a butterfly through the fields. And we see them like all hanging their clothes up to dry. And we see them all just kind of hanging out with the towels and stuff and fishing. Like, that part's all good. But I think the meat of it is when Raiden and Sheen have this conversation while they're just like wrapped up in the sheets. And they're like, it feels like we're the last people left alive. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what? He's like, if the last thing I see is this, then maybe it's not so bad. Was that it? I like to kind of rib each other, being like, what was your famous last words? And he's like, well, how long ago was that? He's like, I never took you for a romantic. I take Raiden for a romantic. I do. Raiden doesn't want to admit it, but I'm like, nah. Raiden gives me, another series I'm watching is Heaven Official's Blessing. Raiden gives me like function vibes kind of from that series. A little bit. He's kind of practical and pragmatic, but he's definitely more of a romantic than he wants to let on. And it's like, I like Raiden a lot. He's probably one of my favorites in this series so far. And because you get the most depth out of him, right? And then Sheen just laughing. Like, I feel like, again, little tiny subtle things that they do with Raiden that I really, really like. Like Raiden watching Sheen because he's like a big brother to him. And so Sheen, he seems more carefree. But it's like, what do you do now? What's your purpose? You've accomplished your goal in 9 episodes. Cool. You basically did the hero's journey in 9 episodes. You did the thing. Now what? And they kind of talk about it a little bit, but it's very mysterious. Right? He's like, I don't think they're dead, but when they die, they just disappear. And you think they're talking about the Legion. Like their mind, their will, they don't stay behind. So, if we're talking about the Legion, they don't die, they just disappear. And then they don't stay behind. And that's it. The Legion just kind of goes. Their mind, their will, everything just kind of leaves. Like the ones that went before us. Yeah, or the people, right? And he's like, yes. And he says, how many are there now? And he says, 576. And then he says, including your brother. And he said, yes. But now I thought he said his brother was gone. So he says, including Ray. So this part's interesting, and I don't want to know answers because I feel like we're going to find stuff out as we go. But it's like he's talking about, I don't know if he's talking about the Legion or if he's talking about the 86. Because he says, how many are there now? And he says 576, including Ray. But including them, but it's like, but Ray's dead. So are the 576 the ones that he's taken their lives of? And what do we do with that? So yeah. And he says, okay. And then he says, what about his name? Because I'm assuming he's talking about, did you leave it? And he says, yeah. So he's left Ray's name. I'm assuming he's talking about, he says, yeah. And he's like, when? And he says, Fido knows. Well, and he says, Fido knows when. Well, but what does that mean? What about the name? And what about Fido knowing this? And then he's like, yeah, you two are really close. And Sheen's like, yeah, it's a question of how far we can take them. How far can we take the names? So I'm assuming he's talking about he told Fido the name on the camera so that he would have it documented. And so they're like, well, how far can we get Fido and all this information? So does Raiden and them know about this? Know that he's recording all of this? What? And did he not tell Raiden because of the possibility? I feel like maybe Sheen keeps everything close to the vest and only tells Fido because Fido is one thing the Legion can't take. Fido is not really a brain. It's like an artificial intelligence that's recording all this, or a computer. It's not a brain that the Legion can use. So Sheen feels he can tell Fido all of this information, and then it will be stored there. And if somebody, it's like a black box. If somebody picks up Fido's black box and looks it over, we'll find all this documented information. Maybe Lena, I don't know. Maybe it'll get to her somehow. I'm not sure. But, well, I don't know how it would. They're in unknown territory unless she goes out there herself. But it feels like Sheen is telling Fido all the information and not Raiden, because Raiden's brain could be taken by Legion. He doesn't want to divulge that information just in case. Interesting. How far can we take them? Without resupply, there's a limit to how long we can keep going. Yeah, they only have a month's worth of supplies. After that month is over, depending on how far they get, that's as far as they can go. Then what? And the end of this episode is when their stuff has run out, because it's October 30th. It's been a month since they left. So they are out of supplies. And so, like, well, it's just a matter of how long we can go, how many days we can survive. This show does a lot of, the one thing this show does that's a very artistic decision, and I don't know how I feel about it, is they tend to do, and Neon Genesis did this a lot, so I can kind of compare it to it, but it would give you exposition without showing you the characters' faces or them having the conversation. It would just show something else happening. Like, it would show, like, coffee making and brewing, or it would show, like, in this case, they're showing a fish, like, getting a line, right? Without showing us the characters' faces. And it's an artistic decision, and it's fine. Again, it's based on a novel, so that makes sense why they can do that. But I don't know how I feel about that, if I would rather them show us the characters talking versus just seeing this random fish. Because I think you can, and I bet it's intentional. They want you to overlook this information because it's going to reveal something, and they're just like letting it like sit in the background, which is an Isayama-like decision. I'm not going to dog it. It's just, it's a choice. Choices. He's like, right. And he says, and you're going to, anything you're going to regret. The Major asked you, do you have any regrets? If there's anything you wanted to do or things you wanted to see before you died, and you said you didn't know. You hadn't even thought about it. Like, you never thought that was the case. And I feel like Raiden, like, we don't know what Raiden's regrets are. We don't know what Raiden wanted to do. But I feel that there are things Raiden wanted to do and that he does have regrets and things he wanted to get done before he died. But I think that the whole point of this is that Raiden's concerned that Sheen has always had this mindset that I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to die, I'm just doing the thing until I die. Well, now he's accomplished his primary goal, which was to put his brother to rest. So it's like he doesn't really have anything to live for. And he kind of left Lena behind. So that possible thing he could live for is no longer in the picture. So I think Raiden is a bit worried about Sheen, that he's going to be kind of suicidal and getting in harm's way and being reckless because he doesn't see any other purpose. Now, but that could be wrong because, you know, Sheen has told them he's going to carry them till the end. But I think Raiden is worried about him being alone. I think Raiden's like, I don't think Sheen's going to abandon us, but I think he's going to stick with us until the end. But then when it's just Sheen, what do we do? Well, who helps him? The Major's not here, so who's going to be there for him when he's by himself? And I think that Raiden's a little bit worried about that. I don't want any of them to die, any of the 5 that are left over. I think several of them are going to. I think that Raiden might live, but I don't know, because it would be kind of something for Raiden to die. But then who's going to watch Sheen, you know? And I honestly think the 2 people I'm most worried about dying are Theo and Anju, because Karina has so far in this series, the most character development we've gotten are characters that are very, very close to Sheen, which are Karina and Raiden and Lena, who are the characters I think are the safest because they're tied to Sheen. And as long as Sheen's alive, they're going to be tied around him, kind of orbiting him. Anju has had a lot of character development in terms of like giving us her personality, things like that. Her whole storyline with Daya. But I feel like with Fido showing us that footage, Fido is kind of filling in some of the gaps with her and Daya. Like it showed Daya, you know, and her in the Aurora Borealis and being like, oh, I want to see the stars. And, you know, some things don't change that easily. And I did like that scene a lot because it kind of pokes fun at the whole, like, we as the audience wanted there to be a romance between Daya and Anju, or at least I did. And the show kind of like pokes you and says, hey, they've only known each other a couple months. You can't just have this thing instantly happen. But then it's so cruel because then we lose Daya and we see that Anju did love him. And so, I don't know. I'm worried about Anju because Fido's footage was kind of filling in the gaps of her and Daya's relationship and showing us more with her character. And I was like, Daya's dead, so I don't know if Anju's going to live much longer, if she's going to join him. And then Theo, I can't believe Theo threw the art book in the flames. I was like, no, I thought he'd carry it with him at least, so he could at least do something. Him throwing away the art book is so sad and burning it. No. I was really sad about that. So that made me think Theo's in danger because, and then when Theo said like the foreshadowing, be like, oh, I thought I'd be the next one to die. I'm like, don't you dare say that because that you said that after Haruto died. I'm like, no. So is Theo gonna die? Show? Why are you foreshadowing? Why are you foreshadowing? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Anju and Theo logically would make the most sense to sacrifice for the sake of making us feel really bad and horrible for these 5. And then it would be Raiden and Karina and Sheen, but I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. So yeah, you can tell that Raiden's kind of worried about it. And he's like, okay. And it's just the 2 of them with the single fish. So yeah. So they're talking about, they're like, what can we do? And they talk about how we can't heat. They're basically needing a boiler to do a bath. And so Fido's been recording all of this. And he's like, we're not going anywhere in particular. We should be in old Imperial territory by now. So we could see what their towns were like. And so I like this. I like that we go through the town and Sheen kind of talks about being from his family, being from Jihad. And we find out Raiden's family were from there, or he thinks his ancestors were. So he's at least, you know, thinks he's from around that time. I like Shin saying that his parents were born in Jihad, but he's never been there. So he really doesn't have any connections or ties to the place. He doesn't know. I thought that there's a possibility there'd be some war with Jihad, but it seems like it was indeed overrun and destroyed by Legion. But they do say the fact that they left it behind. So the people of Jihad that survived may have gone somewhere. We just don't know where yet. And maybe that's where they're trying to head to. I don't know. I do like the flag, the Jihad flag. The Jihad flag, are very similar colors to Sand Magnolia, right? There were a couple things that stuck out here. One, the colors and the ribbons around the flag of Jihad look very similar to that of Sand Magnolia. The other thing is there are two birds. It's a double-headed like griffin or double-headed hawk. It has two heads and they're both facing opposite directions, right? And there's the ribbons that kind of look like the flag of Sand Magnolia on the flag of Jihad, right? So we see that. And then the other thing that stood out is that there are two figures. There's a statue of a man and a statue of a woman. Now, the statue of the woman looks very similar. She has like a scepter and everything. She looks similar to the woman that is the Sand Magnolia statue. She looks similar to that. The other thing it made me think of was Lena and Sheen. Lena reminding me of the woman both in Sand Magnolia and the woman on this statue with Jihad, and the man maybe representing Sheen. So it's like, could you have someone from Jihad and someone from Sand Magnolia come together, like Sheen and Lena? Is that just me shipping? Yes. But the symbolism's there, right? It seems like it's a little bit like giving you a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I like that both Raiden and Sheen say it's not really our homeland. So I'm glad we got resolution about this damn tunnel, and that Sheen wanted to go in and see the Legion that was, the 86 that was going towards him, right? Saying he wants to go home. And then Sheen helped put him to rest too. I really liked when Raiden's like, do not go off on your own. I love how serious Raiden got in that moment where he was like, no. He's like, you can tell Raiden and the others are worried about Sheen and that he doesn't have anything to live for and that he's kind of like just going with the flow until they die. I love how like serious Raiden gets in that moment. It's really, really well done. It's nicely done. I like it a lot. Mm-hmm. And then he's talking about him resting, and Sheen's like, well, I'm always going to be able to hear the Legion's voices, but it's not as bad as when we're not battling them anymore. So yeah. So we have this whole thing with Karina and talking about why she gets treated like a girl. And they ask, why do you think Karina never matured? And that's the thing. I think Karina, I think it's good that she holds on to some of her innocence, that she tries to be kind of like a kid a little bit, because I like that about Karina. It shows that being in war hasn't hardened her so much. Like Anju has this maturity already to her. She's like a big sister from the start. Theo seems hardened by the war. He seems like his heart has hardened over the course of them being in this battle. And Raiden and Sheen obviously are having maturity to them. But I kind of like that Karina doesn't, because her holding on to this kind of innocence, I think, is important. And it kind of reminds me, Karina would hate to hear this, but it reminds me a lot of Lena, where Lena is mature, but she still has this kind of purity to her, and Karina's kind of the same way. I like that about it, right? And I honestly wish that Karina and Lena could meet and be friends, because they're more alike than they seem. Like Karina, when she's talking to Fido and being like, oh my gosh, Sheen complimented me today, and Sheen did this, and Sheen did that. Like I said, Fido gave us more character development in the last 3 minutes of this episode than we've had with her character like half of the series so far. But I love that she has these moments where she's like gushing and flirting about Sheen, and it reminds me a lot of Lena. And so I'm like, I feel like her and Lena, if they could meet and gush about Sheen together, the problem is Sheen could only be with one of them. I don't think he wants to be with Karina, and I think that would break her heart, because I think that Sheen would be with Lena, and I think Karina would be heartbroken about that because she really likes him, and it's just not a thing. So I worry about that. I worry about her, because you could tell she's still jealous even when they bring up that the Major helped cure his loneliness. You can tell that Karina's like, well, that's stupid. I don't like that. And it's like, because yeah, the first thing we see is her watching Sheen sleep peacefully. And then they talk about, it's sad that he had to leave the Major behind, because she'd like, he found someone he could finally entrust himself to. He left his final words behind with Lena. He entrusted those with her. And you can tell Karina's kind of like, well, that's not fair. Kind of has that mentality, right? You can tell it bothers her that Lena gets to be the one to be entrusted to. Because we've seen, and I feel bad for Karina, because we see with Fido's footage, her kind of be like, well, who's going to look after Sheen? Like, she clearly is concerned about Sheen and cares about him. But then for Sheen to entrust his heart with Lena, that's really hard. And I think the others kind of, Anju clearly knows that Karina has a crush. Well, Kaya knew that Karina had a crush on Sheen. I don't know if Anju knows so much, but it kind of sucks for Karina because she clearly likes him and everybody's just assuming that it's not going to be a thing, right? And so then we have the 14th of October and Sheen gets up while everybody's sleeping and walks off. And then Raiden, I like that Raiden's mad. Raiden's like, I told him not to wander off. He did it anyway. What a bastard. And then they go and find him in this zoo. The zoo is honestly such a grisly scene. I say that my favorite scene is the scene with the Legion, but I'm lying. It's actually the zoo scene. The zoo scene is really terrifying and grisly and morbid and fascinating because it shows all like the zoo being abandoned. The animals are stuck in this cage. They can't get out. And so eventually they're just left to die. And that's a representation of the 86. They're trapped in this cage. There is no... It's such an interesting thing because you have this concept of the zoo, which have these animals on display. And there's a little bit of a difference because, you know, the 86 are out of sight, out of mind. They're not meant to be seen by the public. Like a zoo, the animals are on display for the public. With the 86, no. The Sam Magnolia doesn't want the public to know anything about them. They're like a secret zoo, right? They don't want to know anything about them. But the problem is they are reliant on outside supplies to survive. They are trapped in this cage, and if left alone, they will eventually starve. That's the thing. We saw the 86 under the tree out of the Juggernaut. It's like they probably starved and killed themselves or died under the tree because there was nothing left at that point. And that's like the animals in the zoo. It's so sad seeing just their skeletons there because they were basically just left in the cage and eventually they ran out of resources and they just died from malnutrition, from starvation, whatever. And that's kind of like they relate themselves to the animals in the cages being like, we're going to die just like these animals because nobody's giving us resources. We can't survive on our own. What do we do? And it's very heartbreaking, right? And then Sheen finds the moment that Raiden sees the Legion. That part was really good because Raiden's like, oh shit, no, stay away. What are you doing? And he's like, no. And you can see where the Legion's been. There's like the little processor still in there. You can see the processor, but it's been blasted through. It's just barely moving. It's been following them this whole time. But he's like, I can't ignore it. It's calling me. It's an 86. And its last words are, I want to go home. And that scene's so good where everybody's just kind of watching it. Like, what can you do? And then he goes up and shoots it. And that's it. And that's when they talk about if there are any surviving countries besides the Republic, then what do we do about that? Like we have the elephant. Beyond the old borders, beyond Legion territory, there are places the Legion don't go. What if there are survivors there? And it's like, well, what do we do? What will that be like? Will they be countries just as bad as our own? Will they be a lot better? It's this big question mark. We don't know what that's going to be like. And they're like, usually, you know, usually when you get to the end, there's something like paradise or heaven. I like Raiden's line, because what is that leading up? They're like, normally in fairy tales, journeys like this end with you arriving in paradise. Yeah, paradise or heaven. And Raiden's like, well, if I could count on something like that, I would have blown my head off ages ago. I like Raiden saying that, being like, yeah, if I knew that I would be in heaven just by ending the story, then that would have been the case. He's like, but I can't know for sure. And Karina's like, are we going to die like this? And Theo doesn't have an answer. And then we cut to, and Anju doesn't either, and we cut to Fido. And Fido just is like, we have to keep moving forward. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. And the thing is, he's like, what is Fido really? He's not just a dog that beeps, right? They're not telling us what Fido is. Fido's something else. How dare they? And then we see like the oily water with the reflection of Sheen. And Raiden's like, are you going to cross the other side alone, Sheen? And I like Raiden's shoulders just slump. And he's like, never mind, let's go. I think that's what Raiden's worried about, is that Raiden is worried that they're all going to die and Sheen's going to be the last one and nobody's going to be with Sheen and he's going to be by himself. And you can tell Raiden's worried about that. And it's like... And then we get the whole thing with Fido. And it's just all of his, like, memories. Like, we see him, his unit being destroyed. We see a little cottage. We see wherever they're at. We see Sheen as a kid 4 years ago tearing out the parts of the juggernauts. And then the little tear that comes out of Fido, I'm like, no! And that's when he looks down at him, and what does he say there? He says, you're still alive. And then what does he say to him? He says, the squadron, your friends, they're all gone. But even so, will you go back with me? So it seems like he just found Sheen there, but then he has footage of him as a kid. So they give us just this little bit of like, but wait, what about, how did you get here? And so then we watch, you know, there is a moment where we get a shot of Fido showing Sheen like 6 months later going up and finding Ray's body. We get that, then we get him, see him getting older, and then we see him arriving at... Now that whole scene where they take mugshots of them to document if they die, to document the 86 that were killed, seems very, you know, concentration camp-ish. And saying this is your new pigsty. I love where Sheen like takes the bolt and rams it into the wall. But yeah, he takes the photos of all them. And then the last one, and it's Sheen and he knocks it down. Yeah, love it. And then Fido like cheers him on. Mm-hmm. And so then we have the mechanic that's like, you're the Reaper's buddy, huh? Stay with him until the end, okay? So it's like, but what happens to Fido? He's supposed to stay with him till the end. No! No! And then we see like Karina talk about like Sheen like helping to catch Karina when she falls and her getting all flustered by it and like confessing that you know he's like complimented her and doing all this. Then we see Cujo trying to tell Fido that there's nothing out there, it's just stars in the wind. It's not correct. He's just like, oh, there's nothing out there, it doesn't do anything, right? And he's like, you understand, right? And Fido doesn't shake his head because Fido knows it's not true, right? Knows that that's not really the case. And then we see where Haruto and Daya and Theo like tried to like sneak into the bath. It didn't work. And then they ask if Fido's a boy or not. And Fido shakes his head like he is a boy. So I don't know what that means. We see Kaya being progressive as F. Talking about guys liking flowers too. And then we see the whole idea of seeing the Northern Lights and changing your life. And Daya and Anju. And they do some things that are just really heartbreaking, like showing Anju and Daya having the moment and dancing and having that scene together. And then we see her like crying when he's died and seeing the butterflies, all the imagery. Karina saying, what can I do for him? And then we cut directly from that to Sheen talking to Lena saying, what does he say there? She says, I want to do something for him. Let me get back to that. Saying, I want to do something for him. What can I do for him? And then we cut to Sheen saying to Lena, I need you to survive, right? I want you to survive until then. So that is heartbreaking. I feel for Karina because she really likes Sheen, but Sheen just views her platonically and she wants more than that. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Yikes. And then, of course, we have Haruto that's just like, oh, a special recon with the five of them will be tons of fun. And then the next thing we see is, like, him with him hanging over with, like, a bloody puddle under him. I'm like, gee, thanks, symbolism. Thanks, show. We didn't need that. Thanks a lot. And then I can't believe Theo threw his notebook in the fire. And then Sheen says to Fido, I'm happy for you. Sheen has to know that Fido is something else. That there's something else going on there. But what is it? What is Fido? Now I want to know. Because, yeah, and then we see the spire. He saw the spire on the 28th, and then he goes back and sees it on the 1st. And then we see the picture of all of them together. We see him with Ray, him cutting out Ray's juggernaut. But then we see all these little flashes. We see it going back. We see him meeting Raiden. We see him as a kid. And then we see him from 6 years prior. And then the last shot he sees is on the day, the 30th, where he looks at Fido. It looks like he's saying something to Fido. Like he leaves Fido with some last words because it's not nighttime like it is at the end of the episode. It's during the day. So it's like Sheen left him with some words like, I'm telling you this so you can record it. But what? But what? That is the one thing. And then, of course, we see Fido like crying the melded liquid. And then he gets blown up, right? And then they blow him up. And I'm like, but why would you blow up Fido? He wasn't doing anything. That is the one thing. I am very curious to know what all we're going to get with... What all are we going to get with the story? And... I'm so curious. What are we going to get with this group? And there is some mystery that I'm very excited about, but they always leave you with being like, well, but what do you mean? What do you mean they're all in battle and Fido's dying? Why? No. So basically, long story short, I'm probably not going to wait until comments to watch episode 11. I'm going to go ahead and do that because I need to know answers, even if I don't get answers. So I definitely want to keep an open mind, and I'm going to try to be less critical and just let the episodes happen and analyze them and enjoy them the best I can. I think that's the most I can do for now. So I am sorry. I know a lot of people love this show, and I don't want to dog anybody for loving it. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm going to try to be kind. So, and maybe there will be some crazy things happen in episodes to come that I'll be like, oh my God, that completely like blew my mind. And I'm waiting for that. There's a lot of mystery here with a lot of potential to be like, and I'm excited for that to happen. So yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this reaction discussion. I am curious to know your thoughts down below, especially because I may have watched ahead by the time I see them and we'll be able to answer them better. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I'll be back very soon with more 86.